Hi and welcome back to the next part of our Manic Remake tutorial brought to you by wonkypix.com. In this tutorial we're going to recreate the authentic cassette loading sound that you're familiar with the ZX Spectrum, but you could apply this to Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC, or in fact any cassette based system based in the 80s era. To do this we're going to use the freeware tool called Audacity, and it's quite a powerful sound editor, music editor. I do recommend donating for the project. It is a worthwhile one, and you can find the download link here at audacity.sourceforge.net, and there's downloads available for Mac and Windows. There's some very good tutorials on the website. I'm not going to go into how to fully use Audacity, but you will need a sound editor like Audacity or your favourite wave editor, and also a recording that you can create from a cassette tape, and if not, I'm sure you can find plenty on the internet for download. Okay, so we'll start up Audacity, and I'm just going to load up a recording that I made earlier. So the first things first is we need to see the waveform that we're playing with, and it can be a little bit fussy at times, and it's not particularly user friendly. Before we start, on the project settings, we want 44.1 kilohertz. You can select a range here, but this is sufficient for the wave that we're going to create. Snap to is unselected. Selection start we'll just leave as is. I've switched mine to length, and there's a number of sections here, or a number of options. I've chosen hours, minutes, seconds, plus hundredths of a second. You can go milliseconds, samples, etc., whichever you're more comfortable with. For the waveform, you can select where you can see the numbers here on the left hand side, the plus icon, and that will magnify the waveform so you can see more of what's going on this particular recording. And on the top there's another option here to zoom in, and we're going to do this a few times, and we're going to look for the data portion of the cassette. If I move the cursor, just click here, this is what the recording I've got sounds like at the moment. Sounds familiar, yeah? Now, I need to remove sections of sound. It's not needed, so we've got some dead sound here. So just by clicking and dragging with the mouse, I'm just going to hit backspace to delete that portion of the waveform, and we're just going to expand the wave, or the pictorial representation of the wave, and magnify it larger. And what we're looking for the header, it's a fairly uniform set of ones and zeros, so peaks and troughs that we have here moving along, and we need a good visual indicator. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to select where the waveform peaks here just before it drops down the waveform, and to help us I'm going to select 1 second of audio like so, and if I click play, that's about 1 second. Of course we need to clean this up a little bit, so using the mouse, as long as you've got the little hand icon, you can drag the grey area. The grey area, or the dark grey, is the selected portion. So here we are at the start of the waveform here, and I'm going to click one of these here, fit to project, fit to selection. So this is the 1 second clip that we have, and this is a little bit fiddly, but just by scrolling carefully along here and clicking plus a few times, I should start to see the end of the waveform, and we need to match the pattern up pretty good. Let's just keep on going. It doesn't matter if it's slightly more than a second. As I say, it does get fairly fiddly. So what we need is where we've got our visual indicator, this peak here, I'm going to hold down the shift key and press left to select. Now if I click play, that's the audio, and if I hold down shift and play, it will loop. Now we have a click, So that means something's not quite right. We know that we've selected a good end portion because the waveform was where it fell away from the 1 to the 0 and back to the 1 again. So we're going to go back to the beginning and just have a look and see if we can find anything obvious in the waveform where it's not a nice even pattern of 1s and 0s. And here we can see that the pattern's broken, so it's gone from 1 to 0 to 1, 0, 1, 0. So there's just not enough time here. So we're just going to move with our hand icon across to avoid that. So this should now be the top of the peak, and if we press shift and play, it's a standard uniform sound, so we've got rid of the click fairly easily. Next we click File, Export Selection, and we're going to select Wave. You can select MP3, but for the purpose of this project we're going to use Wave format. If you're going to go to other than mobile devices like Android, you may need to look at what is compatible with your device. There are no options in the Wave format, and then I'm going to click Save. No, I'm not. I'm going to name it first. So this is the header. Header sound is what we're interested in here, and I'm going to click Save. I'm not going to bother entering anything into the metadata. I'm just going to click OK, and there we go. Now if I have a look at my folder, I now have a file that's just been created called header sound. Sounds familiar. Next we need a data portion, so we're going to follow the same methodology. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, and this section here is clearly lots of lovely data. So I don't need this anymore. I'm going to hit backspace, select the backspace, and back at the beginning I'm going to select I don't know, let's say 6 seconds of audio, like so. And if I play that, that hauntingly sounds familiar, like the spectrum data that's loading. And if we press shift and play to loop it, we've got a fairly good effect. And if you notice that the selection is rough and ready, I'm not too interested in whether I've got it on a 1 or a 0. But if we do zoom in, you can see here throughout the selection that it's not uniform. So the 1s and 0s are not evenly spaced anymore. Some are longer, some are wider, and some are more narrow as they go. And again, we're going to do the same thing, export selection, and we're going to call this one data sound.wave, and click save. Click OK. And now we have our data. We'll use these sounds to add authenticity to the tape loading process or simulator on the Manic project. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and thank you for tuning in.